Excellent. Well, thank you for joining me today, Andy. Obviously, we started talking recently regarding a piece of work we're putting together that's trying to help less experienced finance professionals, shall we say, learn the routes to the top. And obviously, you've got a lot of thoughts on that subject, which we look forward to hearing, and some wider points from you. For everyone out there, Andy is a CIMA qualified accountant who's had an illustrious career, with potentially the height of it becoming a finance director at Microsoft. They've obviously worked for a number of other multinationals such as O2 along the way. More recently, Andy's set up his own organisation who focus their time on business partnering with SMEs. So Andy, thank you for joining us. I'm going to let you tell everyone a bit more about yourself because you will no doubt do it an awful lot better than I just tried to.
Okay, well, thanks, Chris, and thanks for having me. And the reason I'm here today is, you sent me through a request to fill in a survey on the future of finance, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity to do a podcast with you, and really explain from my perspective how passionate I am about where finance is going, and also the opportunities that it's bringing for everyone in the finance community, particularly developing business partnering roles within the company. My passion has basically come from the fact that I've spent my life in commercial finance. So I went to university, did a business studies degree, qualified at 26, got all my exams out of the way, as CIMA qualified, and then I spent 30 years mainly in the technology, software and telco sectors, providing commercial finance support to different parts of the organisation. So it ranged from marketing, sales, technology, operations. I've supported them all. They're all very different, but it's great because the more functions you support, you get to develop what I call a common business language, which I think is really important going forward for finance people. And I've actually stepped out of finance twice as well. I stepped into O2 marketing and did a marketing planning performance role for 3 years, which was a great time. It's when the company went through massive transformation from being a very poor performing company called BT Cellnet to being bought out by Telefonica for 20 billion 5 years later as part of O2. And that was a fantastic experience. And also, I spent a couple of years in Travelport as a strategic partnership director, so developing strategic partnerships for the company. Again, a great experience. So yes, I've spent most of my career in finance, but I've also stepped out of finance as well. And at the end of the day, the nature of the work that I've done is mainly in supporting decision making for all those different functions, and it's across all the different spectras. So it's investment, buy, build, partnership debates, pricing, product and customer profitability, revenue improvements, all those types of decisions that a business has to go through every day of the year, basically, to stay competitive and sustain its performance.
Excellent. I mean, I think before I ask the first question, one of the interesting things I think that's come out of our report is the number of finance leaders who have taken a step out of finance on the way through their career. So it's definitely not more than half, but it seems to be a theme that's come out in a lot of areas. And I think we've obviously mentioned this when we've spoken before, but your passion in business partnering is definitely one of the biggest messages that's come out of our report so far, as that's actually been highlighted as the #1 skill that will probably be required for future finance leaders. So why do you think that is?
Okay, I think the first thing is just to define what finance business partnering is, because it can mean a lot of things to different people.
Yep.
So in my mind, it's interpreting, evaluating, explaining, and ultimately driving performance in a company. And at the end of the day, finance people are here to provide some sound financial analysis to any decision making in the company. And what's interesting is, as going forward, finance is particularly taking part in more strategic rather than operational decision making, which makes it kind of really exciting for me. I think digitalization, data and AI, ultimately what that's doing is automating a lot of transactional stuff, and all the kind of junior roles are disappearing, and all those roles that are kind of task based and process based are being replaced by automation. But what's interesting is that time that it frees up is actually creating greater opportunity for the finance community to add value. So rather than being the gatekeeper, rather than being the monitor of all the money and, saying no and yes to people and decisions, you actually have more time in your hands to actually work with the business, help them make decisions, because all that kind of processing stuff and bringing data together, bringing reports together is so time consuming. But when that's automated, you've got all that extra time to really add value to the business. So I find it kind of really exciting. Um, and one of the kind of mantras that's come out of the way finance is going, and I can't take credit for this mantra, it is that insight times influence equals business impact. And that's, if you think about it, it's really important because it kind of focuses on what business partnering is all about. It's about providing insight, not information, and it's about influencing other people and decision makers. And the more you influence, the more business impact you're going to have, and that's key. The person who came up with that is a chap who built a foundation called Business Partner Institute. You can find him on LinkedIn. Got about 120,000 followers. A chap called Anders Lindberg, great guy. He's written a book on finance business partnering. It's a great reference book, even for myself. I mean, I was thinking about writing my own book during COVID, and then I got introduced to Anders, and he said, "Oh, well, I've done that." I said, "All right, then I'll buy the book and read it." So, and I have got it up on the bookshelf. It's great read, great reference book as well. So, bit of a plug for him there. In terms of showing some of the difference between a business partner and a traditional finance, to me, it's about being customer focused rather than being numbers focused. It's about outward looking at what's happening in the environment that's impacting company rather than traditionally inward looking. It's about forward looking, where's the company going, as opposed to where has it been. These are the variances of history. Great, well, I can't do anything about history. I can only change the future. And how do I influence the future? It's about maximizing business value, not minimizing cost. The amount of times I see where, finance, what's the key role of the CFO and the FD in these challenging times? We're going to reduce costs, cut T&E, scrap the marketing budget, all the traditional stuff. No, it's not. It's about growing the business. It's about how we can look at the business model differently in these challenging times and grow the business and grow value. It's not all about cutting costs. It's about how you grow the business. So there's some important differentiation between, business partnering and finance. There's a long list. I could go on for a long time, but it's just a flavour of the differences.
Okay, so is that book The Fourth Industrial Revolution that you were telling me about, or is that book a different book?
No, that book's great read. Fourth Industrial
Yeah.
Revolution. It's basically not just about the impact on finance. It came out a couple of years ago, and it basically is informing people about the impact, basically on everyone's jobs and everyone's life of digital and AI,
Okay.
and which ones will transform and which ones will stay around.
Okay.
Great book.
I will have a look. It's interesting you talked about the traditional versus the up and coming, or how it's changed, because outside of business partnering, I think current finance leaders believe that data interpretation would be the next most important technical skill. So I don't know what your thoughts on that are, if you believe that to be true.
So if you haven't heard this expression, you will hear it more and more. So data is the new oil. So I worked on my first data project 5 years ago when I did my strategic partnerships with MasterCard, where they were harnessing credit card data. That's the first time I got involved in data and saw the power of it. So data is the new oil. and more companies are using technology to harness their data sets that they've got to their advantage. So the key thing is it's about collecting data. So what does that mean? It means integrating a lot of systems, collect them in a data lake, and then putting a powerful visualization tool over the top so you can analyze it in various different ways. That's already happened in places like Microsoft, where they've obviously got the technology, and it's happening more and more. Particularly with COVID, it brought about that additional transformation and it speeded things up. What happened in Microsoft was they went on a journey. New CEO 5-6 years ago, he first changed the culture from one of aggressive culture to one of collaborative culture. And then he started to work on, okay, how do we get all these systems to talk to one another so we can create a universal data lake? And that's what they've got, a universal data lake where you can drill into any information that you like at any level, depending on your authority levels. And what does that mean? That means you've got real-time information on your mobile device, on your laptop, whatever, at any time. So you'd have a summary KPI report and you can decide where you want to drill down to. And that's just fantastic, because what that enables you to make decisions a lot quicker, and you've got the power to actually look at the data and analyze it and saying, what is it telling me? The other thing I noticed while I was at Microsoft is that out of the 18 people that worked there in finance, 10% had backgrounds in data science, data analysis. They had no accounting background. They had no accounting experience prior to Microsoft. They had degrees in data science, and that was their background. And I think that's going to happen more and more. More and more, you're going to get people with data science and data analytics experience and qualifications rather than accounting qualifications and experience.
Yeah, I mean, we wrote a white paper about 5 years ago, where we talked about how we felt data science and finance were going to overlap. And it was certainly clear. Again, we'd spoken to quite a lot of finance leaders at that point that they saw the world going that way. And I know I won't jump into questions we've talked about for later, but it's interesting to see that potentially not everyone has kind of gone as far with that in the 5 years that we might have expected them to so far. But I know we'll talk about that later, because I think first of all, it'd be interesting. From all our conversations, it's really clear that you have a very strong vision for what the future of finance would look like. And I just think it'd be interesting to quickly share that with our audience.
Yeah, certainly. So I was fortunate to work for Microsoft for a year, covering maternity leave for somebody, and it just blew my mind the whole year I had there, because this was the future of finance for 99% of the companies, because companies use their own technology to develop it. I mean, I've worked for companies where they don't use their own technology, sell it to other people, but Microsoft very much use their technology internally to develop their own processes and capabilities. And what I saw was a minimal finance department, mainly of business partners, focusing on different areas of the business at a senior level. So it's a very flat structure. All the junior roles, other than a few apprenticeships, disappeared. There were a couple of specialist roles like treasury, tax, but they were at the US level rather than at regional level. And what you're basically seeing is a reduction in the size of finance. So I'll give you an example. Microsoft has roughly 220,000 people now. 5 years ago, it was around about 90,000, and they had 3,000 finance people. Still have 3,000 finance people. So the finance community has kept the same size, even though the rest of the business has more than doubled. And that is really powerful in terms of where finance is going. It's still going to be there. It's just going to be the same size, but more powerful in terms of the functions that it can provide. I think what's also important is how systems come together. So Microsoft's obviously very good at integrating all its CRM systems, sales systems, its finance systems, and you're seeing that more and more. So Sage is now moving into that space with SMEs, bringing all their HR and operational, etc., and developing it in the cloud environment rather than on-prem. So all that's happening, and if it's not happening in your company now, then maybe you should take the lead to make sure it does, because if you don't, you're going to be left behind. So that's a big trend that's happening at the moment. And I suppose the other thing is basically the role of future finance has become more strategic decision making, and it's all about supporting the business, making the right decisions, but providing that financial acumen that all finance people have. I think the other thing that came out very clearly to me was focusing on the customer. I've always focused on the customer, but in Microsoft, both focusing on the internal customer, so whether that's the MD of sales or whoever your internal customers are, but also external customers. So I spent 90% of my time working with customers. They're either internal or external. So I'd go out and meet with the sales team, the clients. Many a times I would actually go and present to the client's finance community. God, how radical is that? A finance community from Microsoft presenting to another finance community of whatever client they were, saying, this is the future. Do you want some of this? And if you do, this is how you get there. So great experience, great exposure. I saw where the future of finance was going. It does have its challenges, though. A couple of things I've noticed is succession planning is difficult, because as the structure becomes flatter, you've got less tiers of people, and there's not so many junior people, so succession plan is difficult. Staying relevant is really important. Everything moving so quickly, so it's about continuous learning, really important. And the question for me is, with AI starting to impact business and life more, particularly with ChatGPT, is the AI or is the human in control? So sometimes at Microsoft, I thought that the systems are in control rather than the humans.
Yeah.
So there's some challenges there going forward.
Okay. So with your vision of finance in the future, what do you think current leaders need to do to transition to where you think they should be?
So it's about collaboration and it's about influencing. It's no longer about, being a know-all and all the technical stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just think collaboration, influencing others. And it's not just influencing people in finance. I'm talking about influencing people across the company, marketing, sales, technology, whoever. So you have to speak their language. So, the more opportunities you get to talk to people in their language and how they perceive things, the better. When I moved into marketing, I gave up timetables and spreadsheets to fluffy presentations and things like this. The CFO at the time said, Andy's going to the dark side. And for a couple of months, it was the dark side. But after a couple of months, I saw the light,
Yeah.
So, but you get to understand how other people think. So marketing people might think about in pictures, but they still have the same objectives, So the people at O2 when I was in marketing still had P&L ownership. They still need to know what the return on investment was, what their profit was making, etc. But they just have a different lens in terms of how they see things. So I think that's really important, in the future, that you kind of develop those different perspectives that people have. And that's part of leading on to what I call emotional intelligence. What is emotional intelligence? What is emotional intelligence? It's about understanding you as a person, what makes you tick, what's your strengths and weaknesses, but also more importantly, what makes other people tick and how they behave and the engagement you have with those. And if you get that right, well, you've probably got your own experience. If you get that right, it's really powerful. Get it wrong, and likewise, things can bomb. So emotional intelligence, really important. Storytelling. So storytelling isn't just for marketeers.
Yeah.
In technology, you have chief storytellers. You actually have somebody on the C-suite called a chief storyteller. Okay. Believe it or not, they are real. I know one of them. But what they're
Sounds
good
like
at,
something from CBB's bedtime, doesn't it?
exactly, yeah. But what they're good at is that engaging with the customer. Okay, so storytelling is about engaging with the customer. So all I say at this stage is you've got to engage with your customer when you're influencing, and to do that, it's not about number crunching. It's about bringing those numbers to life. Not only bringing those numbers to life, thinking about who your audience is. Who are you trying to influence? Is it the CFO? Is it the CMO? Is it the CTO? Whoever that person is, put yourself in their shoes. You know, what are they thinking about? What's their problems? How can you help them? It's not about here's a set of numbers, thanks very much. How are they thinking? Are you supporting them? Do you help them in their challenges that they've got to get over it from day to day? Communications, very important. Um, Finance people traditionally are not very good at communicating, and are not very good at emotional intelligence. So any opportunities you've got to, communicate with people, whether it's through a presentation, whether it's through your email, etc. If you need to go on a presentation course, go on a communication course, because how many times have we all thought we got this email we thought was acidic to our view, and thinking we're going to reply to this, and you go straight into it to reply, and you don't think about what you're doing, and then you regret it when you press the send button.
Yeah.
It's all about thinking about it before you reply, because it's too easy to destroy relationships, and the future's about relationships. I've mentioned being customer orientated, so think about who your customers are. How many times have I been into finance? I've taken over a new department, and I've sat down with the team and said, right, okay, who are your customers? You got a blank face. So you don't know who your customers are. Well, what do you mean? I said, well, the people you support. Who are they? Well, okay. Do your objectives align to theirs? Well, I don't know. I haven't seen their objectives. Well, go and ask them for their objectives. So you've got to align to the customer, whoever you're supporting, to make sure that you're relevant and that you can support them. Because if you can't support them and you're not relevant, they'll just go elsewhere. Yeah. So it's really important, customer focused. Continuous learning, as I've mentioned, always take the opportunity to learn. There's always stuff to learn out there. And one really important thing that I kind of like to bring to people's attention is a growth mindset. So finance business partnering isn't a role; it's a way of thinking, and it's basically based around a growth mindset. You think about opportunities. You think about how to grow the business. You don't worry about failure as long as you learn from it. You look at the opportunities, not just a cost review. It's a way of thinking. So finance business partner to me is not a role, it's a way of thinking. Yeah. So whether you're a CFO, an FD, a finance manager, you can all be good finance business partners with the right mindset. I've talked about developing a common language, which is about the people you're dealing with. And the last point, which is really important that people overlook, is mentoring. Mentoring is really important. Look to get at least one or two mentors within your company you're working for.
Okay. This probably goes back a little bit to a point we were making earlier, where you've mentioned AI and digitalization relatively early, and I've talked about the fact that 5 years ago we could see that things were going that way. I think I said already, but one of the things that surprised me about the report is that finance leaders seem to be unclear as to how much AI and digitalization will actually impact finance going forwards. So I'm interested to know how you think current finance roles are changing with digitalization.
So back office roles will disappear through automation, and are already doing that. Your traditional FP&A, treasury, finance manager roles will transform, because basically you'll have more time. Those reports will produce themselves with the press of a button. So you'll have more time to do other things, and those other things are about supporting the business, providing insight, influencing the decision makers. So it's all good. It's all good trend. I mean, for me, I've been fortunate in my career. I've always seen my work as something that I've always wanted to do, and it's always excited me. And this is an opportunity for everybody to do that, to kind of, who likes spending 2 weeks producing a report and variance analysis when you can just press a button, yeah, and then focus on the more interesting things about driving the business forward, etc. The CFO FD level, they're not really impacted by automation and digitalization. I think what's more important is developing softer skills, so emotional intelligence type of skills, those types of things, because you're dealing with more and more strategic things. You're talking across the business. You're taking on more responsibility going forward, etc. So it's more about developing those softer skills rather than those kind of technical, know it all kind of skills. I suppose the last thing is, just seeing the announcement in the last couple of months with Chat GPT. Life's changing, continues to change, and this particular technology is a game changer. What it will do for finance, still out there in terms of question mark, but you just adapt with it and you develop with it. And for me, any technology is there to improve your life, and it allows you to do other things.
Yeah. I mean, aside from what you're talking about with finance, I was very tempted to actually stick all of the results from our survey into that and let it write the report for me, because it might well do a better job. Anyway, you've talked passionately about emotional intelligence, and again, it's a recurring theme throughout our report. So why do you think it's so important?
It comes back to that mantra, and it's about influence. So you've got to have emotional intelligence to influence. So if you haven't got influence in that formula, which is insight times impact, you're not going to have the impact. Okay, so you might have all the insight in the world, it might be fantastic, but it doesn't go anywhere because you don't win the hearts and minds of the decision makers. You're just a know-it-all that knows his stuff. Great, yeah. So emotional intelligence is important in influencing, and it's something that doesn't normally or naturally come to accountants or finance people. I'm one of them. But the good thing is you can learn it. And if I've learned it, so if I can learn it, anyone can learn it. Yeah. So you don't have to be born with it. It's just something you can learn. And the main tools you can do that is, there's loads of them out there, but the tools that I've used in my career is 360 feedback.
Yeah.
Once a year. It's great, in terms of getting feedback from your customers, your peers, etc. And the other one, again, there's loads out there, but I've used Myers-Briggs 3 times in my career, and I've come up with the same personality type. So, they're pretty accurate, even over time. And I've used those tools to develop my skills for emotional intelligence. What are my weaknesses? And everybody's got weaknesses. What are my strengths? How do I interpret people? They don't go around and say, I'm a particular personality style. You basically, the challenge is, through conversation, you've got to ascertain what type of person they are. Are they a big picture person and they're not interested in all the little numbers, or are they in the detail, or are they both? I've met chief marketing officers that one's been a big picture guy, likes pictures. Another one wants the detail. So it's basically understanding who your customers are, and underpinning that storytelling is EQ skills. You can't be a good storyteller and get that emotional attachment without having some good EQ skills.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's interesting that in my career, and as you know, it hasn't always been with Wade McDonald. So when I was with another agency that are a little bit bigger than us, I was sent away for a week on future managing director type training, and went through virtually every personality type test that you could do. It was exhausting, got filmed in a room, when you forget the camera's there, in group tasks, all of that stuff. And the 360-degree stuff came for me probably earlier in my career. And I think all of those aspects, when I look back at them, have probably been the biggest things that have helped in my development outside of just how to recruit, if you like. So I completely agree with you. So it's interesting. Um, During our conversations and during this, you've obviously talked about customer focus and the fact that finance perhaps has lacked customer focus at times, or people that you've worked with at certain times. I guess just for clarification for people out there, what do you mean, or what does customer focus mean to you? And why do you think it is so crucial to the future of finance and leadership?
Okay, so I really kind of understood what being customer focused is when I went into O2 marketing. Okay. And ever since then, I've kind of developed my whole career about being customer focused, to the point that I've haven't accepted jobs that the CFO has kind of said, the job's yours. And I turn around and say, well, I haven't met my customer yet, the CMO. I need to speak to him or her to see if I'm going to get it on with them. Yeah. So, and that's quite powerful, because normally, if you get a job in finance, it's a CFO or FD offering the role, etc. Customer focus is about, who am I going to work with? Who am I going to support? Can I get on with them? And so it's really important. And going into marketing for a couple of years, I realized, not only from an internal customer point of view, in terms of how you support your customers, but also externally. So going back to that list of what's the difference between business partnering and financial, one of them is outward looking. What's happening in the outside world, in the real world, not in your company, but in the real world? How is your company operating in the real world? And what are those customers that are, that you've got in your customer, how do they think? So ever since I went into marketing, I went back into finance. I've worked in a number of companies. In every company I've been in, within the first 3 months, there's a couple of things I do. I go to the customer touch points. So they're either a call center, or I might visit a store, wherever there's customer touch points, and just spend a day listening to what customers have to say, because it's important, even as a finance person, because you need to question what you're doing. If you're sat there doing something, is this adding value to the business? Is it taking me in the direction of what customers want to do? And if it isn't, stop it. When I was at O2, new CFO came in. He said, right, stop all reporting. Literally, stop all reporting. We stopped all reporting, and we engaged probably two out of the, about 20% of reports got switched back on again. The rest of them got binned. And what that exercise did was, nobody was reading the reports that went out from finance. All they were great graphs, well, brilliant. Nobody missed them. How powerful is that? How many people go into an organisation and say, right, stop the reporting, and just see who shouts? And the people who shout, why are you shouting? And the rest of it, forget it, because nobody's reading it anyway. So you need to either reinvent it, or basically find out what your customers really want. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important. And so it's about aligning your objectives to your customers' objectives. It's about what they want from you and how you can help them. It's not about you helping yourself. It's about how you can help them. And by doing that, you become more relevant. Yeah. And it makes your job a lot easier, because you build those relationships, those influencing skills. And so you're influencing the decisions, because ultimately what you're trying to do is improve the performance of the company through financial acumen. Well, you can do that, but you're doing that through decision makers, whether it's the C-suite or whatever level you work at. I mean, I'm talking about, you don't have to be at C-suite, you can be at a junior level. You still got decision makers in whatever world you operate within the company. I think that's important. Yeah, I think that's the main points about being customer focused.
Okay.
It's not just a marketing thing. You can be customer focused whether you're in finance, technology, wherever.
Yeah. So you've obviously mentioned some new skills or key skills that future leaders need to go and acquire. And I know with emotional intelligence, you've already mentioned between us 360 degree and psychometrics and all of those sorts of things. But how else do you think that some of the other skills you've mentioned could be acquired by people?
Yep. So quick wins. So being customer focused today. Do you understand your customers? Do you know what their objectives are, what they've got to achieve next year?
Yeah.
And if you don't, go and find out. do you know what your company does? Do you know why the customers for the company, buy the products? If you don't, find out, because you should do. Yeah. Because you might actually have an idea of, we could create some more products because I think these customers might like X, Y, and Z. Marketing people are not the only people that can come up with ideas. The best companies in this world are actually ones that use ideas from within their own company, and they can come from marketing, finance, HR, wherever. Yeah. So you've got a voice, use it, but become customer focused, and you can have some really quick wins. Yeah. Leadership. Take the opportunities to lead on things. Lead from the front. Don't be scared about failing. The only thing about failure is not learning. Yeah. Entrepreneurs fail all the time, and they learn and they move on. Yeah. Even people in corporate life fail, but it's the ones that don't learn from their experience and keep on failing and don't learn. They have issues, but most people will fail, they'll learn from it and move on. That's how a lot of people learn anyway. So take the opportunities to lead things. Don't be frightened, and that will kind of develop your confidence, and also allow you to kind of be at the forefront of what the company's doing. Data and digitalization, that's about just getting knowledge of the system. So my experience is Microsoft. More recently with my company's Optimum Value, I work with a lot of SMEs, and so it's involved a lot of implementation of Sage, which is their kind of sweet spot on Sage. But there's lots of kind of technologies out there, but get engaged in what those technologies are, learn those technologies if you can, because they're the future, basically. Business partnering, we've talked about providing financial support. So if you're in a more kind of traditional finance role, which don't have experience of supporting other functions, ask for a secondment or job share or whatever. Make that move in that direction to get that experience. There's no excuse not to. There's different ways you can do it. Just think differently of how you can get that experience. Acquire a mentor. I used to have, well, I've still got 2 mentors now, but in the corporate life, when I was working in corporate life, I used to have at least 2 mentors. Good example was Travelport. I had CFO and CMO. CFO because just to raise my profile, CMO because he'd been there 25 years and he knew everyone. So if I had a problem, I'd go to him and say, who do I speak to? Give me 3 names, get on. Really important when you're in a big corporate, thousands of people and you need to network. So mentoring is really important. And if you're a CIMA member, I'll plug it now because I'm a mentor for CIMA. In 2022, they developed a mentoring program, and it's great. I mentor 2 people at the moment who want to kind of do more commercial finance. I get a lot of enjoyment out of it. And if you're a CIMA member, I recommend you looking into it and joining the scheme, either as a mentee or mentor or both. And I also do a lot of mentoring for my SME clients, mainly at the C-suite as well. So it's really important to develop those skills as an approach. Personal development plan is down to you, the individual, no one else. So companies will provide the resources, but it's up to you to drive it. So the most important thing is, do you have a development plan? Is it up to date? And are you following it? Don't expect other people to chase it. It's up to you to deliver it, no one else. You can sign it off with your boss, whoever your boss is, but it's up to you to deliver it because it's your development plan. And I suppose the last thing is just broaden your horizons. So I stepped out of finance twice in my life. It was scary, but it distinguishes me from other people. Yeah, I've got around skills, business skills, etc., and I use those today. You may not feel brave enough to do that, but there's opportunities to work with other functions, whether it's project-based work or whatever. And I can, highly recommend it. It could because it does broaden your outlook, and you get a different perspective on how people see business and how it operates.
Okay. I guess you covered a little bit of the next thing I was going to ask you off already, but our reports highlighted that a substantial number of finance leaders felt their own rise to the top was slowed down due to a lack of personal development. And you've obviously just mentioned their CIMA mentorship schemes and the importance of mentorship in your own rise through the ranks. Um, I guess the first question I was going to ask you was how important you felt it was for your own development, but I think you've told us that already, really. So I guess the maybe the bigger thing is a lot of people wouldn't necessarily know where to go to get a mentor, how to choose the right mentor, and convince them to do mentorship, or whether it's a bit more they don't know they are your mentor and you're just picking them. So
Yeah.
how do you believe somebody can find a mentor for themselves?
Okay. So mentors can be internal or external to the company. Okay. I've got to have both, and you can have both at the same time. Okay. And as part of your development plan, you need to know where you're going. You need to know what you're doing today, what your next career move is, and what your aspirations are for the next 5 years. Okay. Based on that, that will help you determine who your mentor is going to be. So, for example, in Travelport, investment portfolio analysis, etc., and leading that area, I wanted to do business development. So I made the chief business development officer my mentor. 6 months later, I'm heading up strategic partnerships. So it's a good example of, in my mind, I wanted to broaden my horizons and do more strategic work. So I said, right, who can help me on that? Oh, yes, it's so and so. I'll approach them. There isn't anyone on the planet that um, that would say no to someone approaching them saying, "Would you be a mentor?" They'd probably ask you, just be clear on what you want out of it. But even I see as a compliment, and 9 times out of 10 other people see as a compliment. So don't be scared to say, "Oh, it might say no." Very rarely do people say no unless they're really time pressured. Most people find it complimentary, and they will basically say, as long as we're clear on what you want to get out of it, I can allocate this time. So that's really important, because to me, mentoring is about developing new skills, obviously with your mentor. It's about improving your networking, introduce you to other people in the organization. It's about raising your profile, and it's about opportunities, and where your next move is, etc. And all of those things are good. They can only be good for you. So look internally. It'll be based on your aspirations, your next move, and just to look around. And don't worry about the seniority. I mean, my kind of gut feeling and general rule would be, if you're a more junior member, then probably look at a kind of a controller level position rather than the FD. Um, but saying that, I've seen FDs and CFOs, mentoring junior, but I'd go probably 2 levels above wherever you are. Aim at that level as the mentee mentor relationship. And a lot of my career moves have been down to conversations with my mentor, and a lot of the successes I've had at work have been down to those conversations with mentors. Mentoring is great to bounce ideas off people, or if you've got a challenge, how do I overcome this? Just get someone's perspective. And there's not enough people that actually utilize that resources in companies, So, and you can go outside if you don't see it internally. And I do mentoring for external people, but look internally first and see what opportunities you've got there, and look at the people in the organization. And really important to kind of have respect for the people that you're going to choose, because you're going to have a lot of confidential conversations with them on a regular basis. So it's got to be somebody you respect and you think you can get on with.
Yeah. And again, I think it's an interesting one. So, anyone asking you advice normally makes you feel good about yourself. So you're right, most people won't say no. I'm just thinking back over my career, and both sides of it really, with both being mentored and maybe being someone's informal mentor or maybe more formally. But sometimes that will have led to somebody who was working for me actually leaving the organisation as well.
Yeah.
Because I think if you've got the relationship right and you're choosing the right person, there should be although it hurts sometimes, an unbiased view of what's better for that person. So it is really important to pick right, but that's
Yeah.
good. So Another thing that's come out, and I mentioned to you, so 10 years ago, I was involved in a different study, which was looking at FDs and their backgrounds, where they'd come from, maybe not so much about the advice of how to get there, but more about where they'd come from. And at that point, I think I said to you 39%, 40% were ACAs. And then there was a fairly even split between CIMA and ACCA. Our report has shown that although ACA is still the biggest, that during that 10 years, CIMA has nearly caught up. Now, you are probably going to be biased because over my 25 years of doing this, I've presented to all of the professional institutes, and whoever's done whichever one always seems to think it's the better qualification. And as a recruiter trying to pretend to have emotional intelligence, I always agree with them that theirs is the best. Um, but why do you think CIMA, that there's been such a rise in the number of leaders that have got CIMA? And I guess the second part of the question is, do you think it really matters which qualification you do as long as you're picking up the right experience along the way?
Yeah. So CIMA's grown because, as we talked about, business partnering is the future. Okay, and management accounting, a lot of that work and nature of that work is business partnering to a certain shape and form, and that's why it's grown. Very simply, that's why it's grown, because you've got the skills of a business partner there. Um, I've never got hung up about qualifications and which institute. At the end of the day, you'll come out as qualified accountants. Okay? What you do with those technical skills in life is down to a number of things. It's down to your passion, your career aspirations, the environment you find yourself in, the interests you have. So I would just say, regardless of where you get your qualifications from, the most important thing is just focusing on what you're passionate about, what interests you, where your aspirations are, those types of things. Yeah, and that's the most important thing. And I've always found in life, if you're passionate about something, then you don't actually work. It's not work. You know, you don't have that Sunday night feeling. You kind of wake up on Monday thinking, "Great, I'm going to do this today," and etc. And I know it's difficult to achieve in a lot of places, but if you can get to that point, it's a nice feeling.
Yeah. And again, going back over that, I think that the report also showed that the route to leadership has been so different for everybody. So I know we'll probably get quite a lot of people that come in maybe straight out of university that think that they want to be an FD and are asking the best route to get there. What it would seem is, and I've got friends from both doing this and from school that have become FDs and CFOs. The first role doesn't really matter so much as long as you don't stay in it too long. If it's a more transactional role, so I know quite a lot of FDs that started probably in purchase ledger or credit control. They just didn't stay there for too much longer than 12 months, 18 months before getting into an all-rounded role and then moving forward. So
I think for people starting today, the important thing to know is, the impact of automation,
yeah,
because certain roles are automated. You don't need that experience anymore. Yeah, it kind of, that's gone and
yeah,
done. So you're going to move on to the interesting stuff. So the good thing is you don't have to do all that other stuff that I used to do. And, you can go straight on to the interesting stuff. So you don't have to tick those boxes in audit, or you don't have to look at those invoices and process them and pay them. I mean, who wants to do that? You want to get on to the interesting stuff.
yeah,
So the good thing is the interest stuff's here. Automation's taking away all the boring stuff. The finance role is expanding, and you can use your financial acumen to influence the organisation. It's great. It's a great time to be a finance person.
yeah. No, I agree. Okay, right. Finally, because I know that we've run a little bit over the time that I stole from you, so apologies for that. I guess if there was one just small nugget of advice you could give somebody who was starting out now, what would it be?
Key takeaway for me is develop a growth mindset. Growth mindset, customer focused, be curious, always ask why. Why are we doing this? Don't be afraid to fail. just learn from it, and most importantly, adopt a lifetime learning. I'm 57. I'm 58 in this weekend, but I'm still learning, and I still enjoy learning. You know, the more I learn, the more I think about things and develop and stuff. So, lifetime learning is really important.
Excellent. Well, thank you for today. Thank you for the other few times that I've made you come on and have a chat with me, and for sharing all of your experiences. I'm sure people find it really interesting. I know I have. Have an amazing weekend, celebrating your birthday. And I guess keep learning.
I will do, don't worry.
All right. Thanks a lot for
Thanks very
that.
much. Cheers,
Cheers.
then, Chris. Bye.